Phineas L. MacGuire, Chapter 3. My mom did a scientific experiment this morning. She didn't mean to. These beans have been in here at least a month, she said, pulling a plastic container out of the refrigerator. How did they get pushed way in the back? My mom is always trying to get us to eat more beans. She says they're healthy. The problem is everyone in my family would rather eat pizza. Here's a picture. Including my mom. I ran over to where my mom was standing. Is there any mold on them? I am scientifically very interested in mold. Nope, she said, prying off the blue lid. But they've been in their fridge so long we probably shouldn't eat them. I'm going to throw them away. 5 seconds after the lid came off, the kitchen started filling with a strange smell. It was like everybody in the world had farted at the same time. As a scientist, I found this very interesting. Open the windows, quick, my mom yelled. She ran to a window in the living room and started tugging at it. It wouldn't open. She tried the other living room window. It wouldn't open either. This is how we found out all the windows in our house are stuck closed. My mom was pretty upset. She had to leave for work in 15 minutes, and she was afraid that the bean smell would still be there when she got home. She didn't like the bean smell. Even worse, she didn't like the women in her book club. Didn't think the women in her book club would like the bean smell either. 8 people will be here at 7 p.m. and it's going to smell like every toilet on the stove backfired. Sorry, that every toilet on the street backfired, she moaned. She rubbed her forehead, like she suddenly had the worst headache in the world. Mom, I said. Not right now, Mac, she said, waving her hand at me. But Mom, I mean it, Mac, my mom said, sounding irritated. You need to run and catch your bus. Your lunch money is in your backpack. It's very easy to irritate my mom. Marcus could do it just by walking in the front door. He never knocked, and the first thing he did when he came in was yell, "Hello!" at the top of his lungs. He didn't care if my sister was napping or if someone was on the phone or anything. My mom cared. When you have grown up with an irritated mother, you know when to leave her alone. I grabbed my backpack off the kitchen table and left for the bus stop. I felt pretty happy. I needed something for share and stare, and now I had something even better. It was a scientific something. Share and stare is Mrs. Tuttle's version of show and tell. In case you were wondering, you have to show something or talk about something that has to do with a school subject like math or science or books. I think she's afraid that 4th graders would think regular show and tell is for babies. She's pretty right about that. So you see, I told my classmates at the end of my share and stare turn later that morning, my mom shouldn't worry because the gas molecules, that's what was stinking up our house, the gas from the beans, will have broken apart long before tonight, and our house won't stink anymore. I thought everyone would be interested in my story. What I didn't realize was that some people would be interested in the wrong way. Hey, Stinkazoid, MacGuire called on the playground. Remind me never to come over to your stinkoid house, okay? I was sitting on a swing looking at a volcano book that Marcus had given me before he moved. Reading this book made me feel sad. There were 2 reasons. Number 1, it made me miss having a best friend, and number 2, it made me realize I was sort of losing interest in volcanoes. I mean it, MacGuire called. I'm going to stay 3 miles away from your house at all times. P.U. Good, I told him, hardly bothering to look up from my sad volcano book. I was hoping you'd say that. I heard somebody laughing like my comeback had been really good instead of just okay. Big Mac attack, Aretha shouted from the monkey bars. She ran over to the swing and slapped high fives with me. Then she turned to Mac R. You shouldn't talk so much about stink bomb, she yelled. You could tell Aretha hadn't forgotten Mac R's remark about boys being smarter than girls. Here's another picture. My hand stung a little bit from slapping high fives. I didn't mind, though. Me and Marcus used to slap high fives all the time. That's how we celebrated our many scientific breakthroughs. Slapping high fives with Aretha made me feel better, and my hand didn't even itch. I walked back to room 34, feeling like it was going to be a good rest of the day, which shows you how much I knew. Chapter 4. Listen up, team, Mrs. Tuttle yelled. Time to zip your lips. She made the zipping sign by pulling her fingers across her mouth. A bunch of kids did the same thing and started making funny buzzing noises like they were trying to talk through their zipped lips. This made Mrs. Tuttle learn her lesson that zip your lips is more of a little kid thing. This is her first year of teaching 4th grade after 3 years of 1st grade. She's still getting adjusted. Here is what makes Mrs. Tuttle a good teacher. Instead of yelling at us some more about being quiet, she made the buzzing noise back at us. Then she skipped through the room singing, "I am the bee of silence, beware of my sting," and poked the buzzers in their arms. It helped people get the silliness out of their system, and we all quieted down. 4th grade science fair, she said, writing it on the board. We've talked about it. We've dreamed about it, and now the time has finally come. I patted my fists on my desk so it sounded like a drum roll, which is what guys do instead of jumping up and down in their seats and screaming when something the teacher says makes them happy, which is what girls do. The 4th grade science fair is the first time you can be in the science fair at our school. Me and Marcus had been practicing science projects and experiments for the 4th grade science fair for years. Some of our greatest hits included exploding film canisters. You fill a film canister halfway with water, drop half a tab of Alka-Seltzer in it, put the top back on, then move out of the way. The cap pops off and flies into the air like a rocket ship. This is an experiment about gas buildup, although not the kind that stinks up your whole house. Okay, quick picture. Mrs. Tuttle. Number 2, microwave marshmallows. Put a marshmallow on a paper plate and zap it for 30 seconds. The coolest part is when the marshmallow gets really huge and looks like it's going to explode. The second coolest part is how it stays white on the outside but gets all toasted on the inside. It's like the opposite of roasting marshmallows over a campfire. Number 3, a cannibal insect study. There are many insects that eat their own kind, including praying mantises sometimes. Lassoing larvae, if there's nothing else around to eat. Cannibal mites, which actually aren't insects, but everybody thinks they are, so we counted them, and pirate spiders. The only problem with this study was that it made us stop liking these insects after we thought about them a while. I mean, eating your friends and relatives is a pretty gross thing to do. Remembering all our great experiments, I couldn't believe that Marcus wasn't here. Now that it was finally time to prove to the world what great scientists we were. Years from now, would anyone at this school even remember that Marcus had always gotten hundreds on his science tests? That in 2nd grade, me and Marcus had been famous for capturing 17 tadpoles in the creek behind Marcus's house and donating the whole jar to Mrs. Hinkle's class? I guess I would just have to win the 4th grade science fair for both of us. Ideas for projects started bouncing around in my head. I wouldn't mind doing something that exploded and had lots of smokes and sparks, something with a Bunsen burner and a chemistry set. I've been begging my mom to buy me a Bunsen burner and a chemistry set since I was 7, but she says that people like me, people who never saw a glass they didn't automatically knock over, should not be allowed in the same room with chemistry equipment. Mrs. Tuttle held up a clipboard. Sign-up sheet. You need to work with a partner. Whoever doesn't have a partner, please raise his or her hand. 4 kids raised their hand. Me, Mac R., Roland Forth, and Aretha Timmons. I was surprised that Aretha didn't have a partner until she said, "Mrs. Tuttle, do we have to have a partner? My idea for a project won't work very well with 2 people." "Sorry, Aretha," Mrs. Tuttle said. "That's the rule this year." Aretha shook her head like she couldn't believe how stupid having partners was. "It's not fair," she muttered, and popped her pencil on her desk a few times. "It's good to collaborate, Aretha," Mrs. Tuttle said. "This is a big word with teachers, I've noticed. I have never thought about how they were always making you work in groups and pairs until I didn't have an automatic partner. Now I'm thinking they should just be quiet about all this collaborating and let some people work by themselves sometimes." I was working up my nerve to tell Mrs. Tuttle that I would be Aretha's partner. I knew that if I said that, people would say I wanted Aretha to be my girlfriend. They would say this very loud and for a long time. I didn't want people to say this. I didn't want them to yell, "Mac loves Aretha," when I got on the bus in the morning. I didn't want them to yell, "Hey, Mac, there's your girlfriend," every time Aretha walked into room 34. The only thing worse than everyone yelling about Aretha being my girlfriend would be having to do a science fair project with Mac R. or Roland Forth. "Roland," Mrs. Tuttle called out, "you and Aretha partner up." And please stop that humming. Aretha's pencil popped even harder on her desk. Roland pulled his desk close to hers. He didn't stop humming even for a second. And that leaves the 2 Macs, Mrs. Tuttle said, writing something down on her clipboard. You guys pull your desks together and do some brainstorming. Picture. And picture. Everybody get together with your partners. I want a description of your project in stunning multicolor detail by Monday. Research project or experiment. Take your pick. Here's what surprised me. MacGuire actually seemed excited that we were going to be partners. I thought he would be as mad as Aretha, but he dragged his desk over to where mine was right away, bumping into about 8 other kids on the way. High fives, big guy, MacGuire said when he sat down. He lifted up his right hand for a big high five smack. This was the same hand he'd been using to pick his nose with all through journal writing. He had had a dictionary in front of his face, but I could see his finger jabbing in and out. I did not high-five MacGuire. He changed his high-five into a kind of wave, but when I turned around to see who he was waving at, all I saw was the art supply closet. MacGuire leaned toward me. He seemed to have forgotten about me being a stinkozoid person. I've got one word for you, he said. I closed my eyes. I knew what was coming. When I opened my eyes, MacGuire was grinning. Dinosaurs, he said. Amazing, incredible, fantastizoid dinosaurs. That's 5 words, I told him. Unless you only count dinosaurs once, and then it's only 4 words. Plus, I don't think fantastizoid is an actual word. MacGuire waved away my word count. We can do something really awesome. I just know it. Maybe something with raptors. Maybe we could build one that really flies. I put my head down on my desk. How do you build a dinosaur? I asked, not bothering to look up. A flying one, which has to be done in 2 weeks. You get a kit, moron. I lifted up my head a few inches and looked at MacGuire. You can't use a kit for a science fair project. This didn't seem to concern him at all. You just throw away the box. He said nobody would even know it was a kit. They would know, even if they aren't automatic geniuses like people in Seattle, Washington. The judges would know. My sister would know, and she doesn't know anything about science at all. There's the 2 boys. MacGuire pounded his fist against his desk. He was even more excited than before. Hey, I saw you reading about volcanoes on the playground. We could do raptors flying around a volcano, and the volcano could explode. Erupt, I said. Volcanoes do not explode. They erupt. I may be the world's biggest milk spiller, but I am not sloppy when it comes to scientific terminology. Whatever MacGuire said, a volcano would be awesome. I didn't want to do a volcano, and I especially didn't want to do a volcano with MacGuire. But I had a feeling that was exactly what I would be doing. End of chapter 4.